Firstly, I'd like to welcome Ambassador Carrasco to the House this evening, and indeed to your team as well. I'd like to welcome Minister Coveney's comments at the opening of this debate. It was a strong speech outlining his and this government's and this House's solidarity with Ukraine at this time. And I'd like to welcome the unity and solidarity that has been expressed by members across this chamber this evening also. At the outset, I just want to say and make this distinction that the Russian people are not Putin, and Putin is not the Russian people. I think that distinction is critically important, and we all should be very clear about that. A war on the borders of the European Union and in cyberspace, a war on a sovereign state, and a war on democracy itself is starting to play out. It is as sombre an occasion, as sombre tonight as events in the early 1910s or in the 1930s, or indeed the events of the Cold War of the latter half of the 20th century. It is worthwhile reiterating in this chamber that the West has not goaded Putin into war. The Russian president has often invoked the NATO threat as justification, but this week he clearly laid out his actual grievances for lost power and for lost influence. So let there be no mistake. This is a war initiated by Putin on a sovereign and independent state. Putin has always feared successful democracies, particularly flourishing sovereign independent states following the fall of the USSR. We need to be prepared, and I'm sad to say it, for a humanitarian crisis caused by an autocratic regime, and we need to be willing to play our part. My colleague on the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defence, Deputy Cathal Berry, has repeatedly emphasised the need to support the Ukrainian people, as he did just a few minutes ago. He stated how we often think we have little control over geopolitical events, but we do have control over our preparation and our response. Sanctions by the United States and the European Union this week are to be welcomed, and the swiftness of those sanctions is to be welcomed. And we're likely going to need further and more severe sanctions as we go forward. I see Deputy Howlin in the chamber this evening, and I want to acknowledge his efforts in bringing forward the Proceeds of Crime Gross Human Rights Abuses Bill in 2020. That completed second stage in this House last year. This bill would strengthen our defence against Russian oligarchs who are laundering money in this country. And I think this government should seriously consider supporting Deputy Howlin's bill. Reference was made earlier to Nord Stream 2 and the cancellation of the project yesterday. I think this was the correct decision by Prime Minister Schulz. And it will cause hardship for the European Union, and it will lead to an elevation of energy prices across member states. But this is the price of solidarity. It is the price of upholding democracy and sovereign integrity. Deputies mentioned the longer-term solution, and I've spoken many times in this House about it, how the West of the European Union can provide the energy for Europe so that it is not relying on the autocratic regime to the east. I've spoken about it in terms of the opportunity that it represents for Ireland, but it is an opportunity for Europe to unravel itself from dependence on the Russian state. War and violence should never be glorified. It results in death and destruction, in families divided, and a long legacy of trauma. Democracy is fragile. Democracy must be shored up in our institutions, by our media, and in this House. We must avoid misinformation and polarisation on the critical issues of our day. But democracy can be resilient too, when people unite with a common purpose. Years of sustained and unrelenting pressure from Putin has not broken Ukraine's democracy. With true and effective solidarity and unity, I don't believe that he will succeed this time either. Gur Mahagad Kangorla.